Okay, everybody. Well, you asked for me to do a video or start doing videos where I'm narrating them. So I thought I would start off with this piece of Widowmaker from Overwatch, and I'm having a lot of fun drawing these Overwatch characters. I don't really play many games very much, but like how the designs look on these Overwatch characters. I know it's a pretty popular game, and they're fun to draw. So uh, yeah, this might be the last one. I'm probably gonna start doing some League of Legends and some other video game art, and I'll still do uh, the comic book drawing art, like DC and Marvel and stuff. So the question I get asked a lot is what kind of pencils am I using? Well, I vary them all the time from each page, each video, each piece I'm doing. And in this particular video, I'm using a Prisma pencil. Now, it's the same company that manufactures the Prisma color pencils, but these are just the Prisma pencils, and the lead I'm using here is a 2H. 2H is a really good pencil for layouts. I always try to use the harder leads for layouts, and if you guys don't already know, so the way it works, or to understand the hardness and softness, so if it's 2H, 3H, 4H, and so forth, that's the hardness, that's the harder the lead, so it's the lighter it appears on paper. Then when you get to HB, B, 2B, 3B, and so forth, the lead is a lot softer, and it appears much darker on paper. Now keep in mind though, when you're using the harder lead, the harder you press on the paper, the harder it becomes to erase. So draw lightly so you don't have those marks when you make mistakes. I'm constantly erasing in my videos, so keep that in mind. So you saw how I constructed the head. This angle, in my opinion, is easier to draw than other angles, like a straight on angle. When you draw an angle or a headshot looking right at you, it's a lot harder to draw, because you got to keep in mind, you got to keep the eyes and everything even. They're both level, the eyebrows, the eyes, the chin, the jawline. So when you do a 3/4 turn shot like this, it's a little easier. You don't have to worry about that stuff. Now in the layout stage, I try not to I try to keep it pretty loose, and as you can see, I start tightening up with the same pencil. Now usually that I have like 3 stages when I begin a drawing. The first stage, which you saw in the very beginning, is the layout. It's just like an oval for a head. I draw the lines for my eyes, nose, mouth, the torso, neck, and all that. And then I go back and I start tightening up the details at the costume, and I draw through it, like her headgear right there. I draw through the head, so you see all the lines there, and I worry about erasing that stuff later when I start tightening up and making it more of a finished piece. Now for the reference I used for this, I just went to the Overwatch website. They have like a character bio page, and I just click on that and see their costumes and just try and make sure I get it right. Sometimes I do look at it like a cosplay photo, but then sometimes when you look at a cosplay, look at the costume, it's a little different from the game. So I try and do both. I look at a cosplay, and then I look at another reference just for the costume, like a character sheet, like I said, on the website, because it has all angles on it. So again, now I'm tightening up the eyes. Now the most important part when I'm drawing a face, is the eyes. That's the most important. That kind of gives you the whole emotion, how they're feeling. It says a lot about the character. And I've been drawing a lot of female characters lately, just because I'm still experimenting with different styles. I've been really drawn to anime. You know, I grew up watching it, but I kind of want to infuse my own style at the same time. So that's the whole reason why I've been drawing a lot of female characters. I'm kind of just focusing on them for now, and then I'm gonna move on with the male characters. And you'll still see me draw, you know, superheroes, but I do, like, lately I've been really enjoying watching and looking at anime artists and their styles, you know, like Art Germ. If you guys know Art Germ, seen his work, he's amazing. I love what he does. I love his coloring, the digital stuff. It's super cool. And actually, I've been doing some digital work lately, so that's why I haven't been uploading as many videos. I've been messing around with Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint. I'm not really a digital artist, so like I said, I'm just kind of learning my way around it and trying to adapt to it. Okay, so still, I'm just now, this is kind of like the stage 3 where I get a little more into detail. Actually, no, this is still stage 2. I'm sorry, let me take that back. This is still stage 2, because before I go into stage 3 pencils, I will actually lightly erase the drawing, the layout, and then really tighten up the pencils. Even though I ink myself, I still do pretty tight pencils, even if I'm going to do the inks. I feel more comfortable that way. I'm still not, you know, 100% confident with inks. When I do the details, I like to make sure the pencils are real tight and like where everything should be. You know, the thing with drawing on toned paper like this, the colored paper, as opposed to white paper, you know, if you make a mistake with inks, you could just use white out, correct it. On here, you can't correct it. You can't put white on it. It shows up. So, alright, so as this video goes along, I'll explain the process, what I'm doing, and then I'll be answering some questions I've been getting a lot lately on the channel. I'll also have questions from my Facebook page and my Instagram, so I'll go back and forth and answer some of these questions I get a lot, and then I'll talk about the process, since I'm kind of like, right here I'm just tightening up, so there's not really much explaining to do right here. So one of the questions I get is, what type of paper do you use? So lately I've been using the toned paper, mainly the Strathmore mixed media, just because it takes the Copics really well, and I like how Copics look on toned paper. That it gives it a warmer feel to it, and actually it blends very well on the mixed media. But this particular sketchbook is not a Strathmore, and I believe it's a Cottonwood Arts. I got it from WonderCon about a month ago. So if you guys find it, it's really good. It's good paper. Okay, so you saw how I erased the drawing. Now I come in with a 2mm lead holder with an HB lead this time. So I use a softer lead because it has a darker line, and I like the 2mm lead holders because if you get the sharpener on it, you can really get a really like tight point, like sharp point on that lead for minor details. So you know, I love those pencils. They're terrific. I have all sorts of them, and I put different types of leads in each. So if you guys, you know, if you stop at your comic shop, or if you go on Amazon, just type in 2mm lead holder, you'll see a variety of them, and really they're all pretty much the same. It's just your preference on which one you want to get. Okay, another question. Let's see. Have you considered showing your drawing videos in real time and narrating them? Well, that's what I'm doing right now. Thank you. Although this video isn't in real time. The total time for this video, or for this piece, I think is about an hour and 20 minutes. So I think you guys would just be bored out of your mind listening to me for that long. You're probably already bored out of your mind listening to me right now. I apologize. Just bear with me. But yeah, oh, here we go. See that little eraser? That's a mono eraser. It's really good for small details, and you'll see me use it in all my videos. Now the way I draw is I kind of think of sculpting. Sometimes I'll make the head a little bigger than I know how it should be, and then I come in later and size it with that eraser. So, and it's great for the small details like the eyes. If it's just a little bit off, maybe it's a little too thick on the upper eyeline or whatever, you just thin it up with that eraser, which you can't do with any other erasers. So if you can find those on Amazon, it's only like a few bucks. They're refillable. You get the refills for about the same price. Okay, what else we got here? We have... Okay. Were you influenced by J. Scott Campbell, or did your style just come out with a J. Scott feel to it? I guess it just came out that way. That comment actually came from the Cammy Street Fighter piece I did like a couple weeks back. J. Scott, he was definitely influential on me when I was younger. I grew up, I was born in the 80s, but I grew up in the 90s during the whole, when Image Comics was formed, Jim Lee and J. Scott and all them. And yeah, his work influenced me. He doesn't really influence me as much today. I still think he's a great artist, but nowadays, I'm drawn to people like Sean Gordon Murphy. I just recently started really looking at Art Germ's work, Alvin Lee. So yeah, a lot of those artists, obviously I'm still influenced by people like Jim Lee and stuff, but I try not to look at Jim Lee's work too much, because the thing is, when I look up to artists and I see their artwork a lot, like for example Greg Capullo, I find myself kind of mimicking them, and I don't want to do that. I don't want my work to look like Greg Capullo's. I don't want it to look like Jim Lee. I want it to look like mine. So, I still don't feel like I have a style, but everyone comments, says they love my style, so I guess I have a style. I never really thought of it, or thought I did. A lot of these comments, you guys are saying, love your videos, I'm learning a lot. Cool, I appreciate it. I'm glad they're helping you. I will be doing a lot more videos where I'm narrating and slowing them down. Maybe I'll speed them up like 2 times and not so fast, where I take an hour and a half drawing and condense it to 8 minutes, so I feel at this speed you could see, the process pretty well. Okay, so for the eyes, the inks, I'm using a Pigma Micron. For the eyes, I'm using a 0.1 size, so it's pretty small nib for small details. And the pens are great. They last a while. They're pretty cheap. They're not too expensive. And usually, if you go to the art store, every time I bought them, they're always on sale, or there's some type of deal on them. Actually, for the nose and lips, I used a size 2, a slightly thicker nib than what I used for the eyes. And then for the outline of the face and the body, I'll use a size 8. It's a really thick nib, and the cool thing with the Pigma Microns, you could change the line weight on it. Just tilt the pen a little bit, you get a nice thin line. Press a little harder and and angle the pen differently, you get a thicker line. Not like a brush or a crow quill, but I'm a lot more comfortable using these pens than I would with like a Pro Quill. They drive me nuts. You know, I'll probably use them again in the future, but every time I use them, I think it's the paper I use with them, it just doesn't like it. Okay, now one thing to keep in mind when you're drawing somebody with, armor or something, like the headgear right here, you want to make those pieces stand out. So that's why I'm using a thicker pen, like the size 8. And it just makes it pop more. You don't want to use the same size pen on the entire drawing because it's just going to look flat. And so you could get these Pigma microns in a set where they vary in size. So don't limit yourself to just one size nib. And I think the smallest it goes down to is a 0.005. That's for the very, very small details. And really, it's such a small detail where people really won't be able to see it. Okay, so another question I get asked a lot is, I kind of answered this one earlier or talked about it, is do you have any or do any preliminary sketches, or do you look at reference for ideas for the initial layout? Yeah, I do. I'll just find an image on the web, like a model or something, and I'll use that as my reference for the figure and the angle. But for the most part, like, for characters like this, I don't really know very well or know at all. Yeah, I will look at reference. I will pull up different pictures, different angles to see the costumes. So yeah, I'll look at reference. But if I'm drawing Batman, or let's say Wolverine or Deadpool, I'm not going to look at any reference really. Spider-Man, I will. It just depends on what costume I'm doing. I did the PlayStation 4 version that's coming out soon. I've done the Iron Spider-Man from Infinity War, and then I've done Homecoming, both suits in Homecoming. So yeah, I will look at reference for stuff like that if I haven't drawn it before. Let's see, we got another question. Any chance you could list your Copic color choices in the future? Yes, I will try and do more videos in the future where I narrate them and list all the Copic markers I'm using. I think I did that on my last one. I put on the bottom of the screen, every time I changed markers, I put the color code that I use. So if we want to draw along and get the markers I use, yeah, those are the ones I use. Keep in mind they are slightly expensive, but usually anywhere that sells them, there's price breaks. So like if you buy 3, 4, or 5 or more or something like that, it'll be cheaper if you buy in bulk. And I'll talk about blending Copic markers in this video when I get to the Copic markers. So that part's coming up. So yeah, I am going to talk about that, so don't worry. What is this? What white pencil do you use in your videos? Lately, I've been using a white charcoal pencil, and I've been using the white watercolor pencils from Prismacolor. They work really great. I think the white charcoal actually works a little better, and you can actually blend it out on the paper. So yeah. Okay, so I'm erasing all the pencils with a kneaded eraser. They're great erasers. If you guys want to pick those up, they work terrific. Okay, so here I'm using a Copic sketch marker. There's a difference. There's the sketch markers and there's the regular markers. The sketch markers, they have a brush tip, just like you see at the end of this. Now, I didn't realize it at the time before I started coloring this. I started running low on ink. in my markers, so I need to make a trip out to the store and buy more markers. Now they are refillable, but honestly, once it runs out, I just buy another one. It comes about almost the same in price. If you're going to buy a new nib and you're going to buy ink, you might as well just buy a new pen, because the cost is pretty much the same. Now what I'm doing is I'm using the gray Copic sketch marker, and I'm just laying down a base. Now I don't plan on her skin being gray, but you'll see what I'm gonna do. I'll put the shadows in first in gray, and then I'll put a color over it, like blue or purple. It has a really neat effect, especially when you use a toned paper like this. And the cool thing with these brush tip Copic sketch markers, you could really you can control it a lot with the brush. You know, you could do a nice fade in just one stroke. Just, you know, when you press down, just lift up. Now here you'll see what I'm talking about. If you look close at that nib, it's got like almost a white tip on it. That means the nib is pretty much done and the ink is running low. So I improvise, and you'll see what I'm about to do. This Copic sketch marker is actually called a Chow. I think that's how I pronounce it. Chow sketch marker. They're a little smaller. They're kind of like the beginner stage markers. Less expensive. They're only like a few bucks. Now, since that marker pretty much died, I decided to go with a darker tone of the blue. And it was a little darker than I was hoping for. I kind of wanted her skin to be a little lighter, but I kind of just went with it. I'm like, oh, okay, it looks pretty decent. So that's how it turned out. Like I said, I really need to stock up on my Copic markers and make a trip out to the store. Okay, so another question I get asked a lot is how am I blending? How do you blend the Copic markers? And I will do a video in the future where it's strictly just blending the markers. It'll probably be like a 10-minute video or something. But the way I blend, and there's different ways to do it. Copic has this marker called the blender. I think it's a 00 or a 0. I can't remember. I don't use them. I don't really like them. I feel like every time I've used them before, even when I use it on thick paper, even watercolor paper, I feel like it just eats the paper, and the paper, whatever paper I'm using, doesn't absorb it. It absorbs it too much, and it just bleeds the color everywhere and just kind of ruins the image. So maybe I'm using them wrong, but in my experience with them, I just prefer not to use them. But as far as blending, okay, let's say for example you're using the warm grays, and I've used them a lot before. I think I used I did use them in my Venom video last week. And let's say you're using the warm grays, so I usually pick 3 colors: a warm gray number 1, a 3, and a 5. Now the 1, 3, and 5, that's the value number on the marker. It will say W1, W3, W5. Well, I would use the 3 and the 5 as my base colors for the shadows and for the overall color on the area I'm working on, and then I use the W1 and go over it and just blend it all together. And you'll actually see me do that in this piece here soon. I kind of did it on the face, but the marker ran out of ink, so couldn't do it too much. And here's that white charcoal pencil I told you about. It works great. You can find these at any store. You could buy them online, Amazon, just a few bucks. Okay, so here I am using another Copic. It's the violets. And here I'm using a lighter tone. Now, most of the time, I will work from light to dark with Copics. But then there's times I work from dark to light. It just kind of depends on the area I'm coloring, the type of armor, or, and sometimes whatever closest marker is to me. So you see how I'm blending those two? Now, you could blend, I explained I usually use 3 markers, but you could also use 2, especially if, they get expensive. So I don't have all the colors, but I did have 2 of these ones that are just a couple shades apart, and I'll just go back and forth with them. I'll just rework the same area. So I use a lot of the ink. I abuse these Copic markers to the extent, they don't last as long as they probably should, just because the way I use it. It's like here I'll go over with a lighter purple or a lighter color, then I'll come back in with a darker value, like a couple shades away from the previous color I used. So after I darken it, then I'll go back with the previous marker and go back over it. And you're about to see me do that here. And you notice how I'm not, there's certain areas I'm not coloring because I'm leaving that for whites. I'm using that as the highlights with the charcoal pencil. Now, okay, so here we go. I'm going a little darker with the purple or violet. I can't remember the name of this one, the value number, but I'm going in darker. And then afterwards, I'm going to go back to the other purple I first used and go back over it. And it blends it pretty well. And this paper, the Cottonwood Arts, it holds the Copic ink really good. And so does the Strathmore Mixed Media. Works really well. Oh, no. Okay, I lied. Sorry. So I went in with the pink. Now here, I'm just using the pink and I'm blending all the colors together. I really wanted a strong highlight on the costume. I really wanted parts of it to stand out. And that's what I did here. Now what am I doing? Oh, okay. Alright, let me see if I got another question. Let's see. Oh, this person says, you should work for DC. Honestly, I'm nowhere near ready for DC. And to be quite honest, I don't even think I really want to work in the comic industry. I think I'm more drawn towards the gaming industry. It looks a lot more fun. I think drawing comic books is just be a lot more stressful. Okay, so here's the lighter purple I'm using. The original purple I used for the suit or the costume. And here's the white charcoal pencil to finish off those highlights. Now when you do the highlights with the charcoal pencil, kind of make sure that the ink has dried before you do it. Otherwise, it doesn't come out as good. So keep in mind, my suggestion to you, if you want to blend with Copic markers, it's good to use at least 3 different colors or 3 different markers a couple shades apart. So let's just say, for example, if it's a B90, you're using a B94, you want to use also a B96, B98, the B standing for blue and the number standing for the saturation hue. I'm really bad at the terminology, but when you're at the store or buying the markers, just look at the numbers. Want to keep them a couple shades apart. Use the lightest shade to blend the 2 darker shades together. and it works great. If you're more of on a budget, like I can't really afford to buy 3, I could get a couple, then you could use 2. You can still get the same effects, just as good. Just just keep working back and forth. Start with your lighter shade, then go in with your dark for the shadow, and then go back to the lighter shade to blend them both together. So this is the Copic marker with a W. I think this is a W8. So I'm using a W8 warm gray, and this time I'm working dark to light. Like I said, I go back and forth. I'm not always set in one way, and that's the beauty with these Copic markers. You can do either or. It's really your preference. So now I got the warm gray W6, and you notice how I start in the darker area with the W8 and then work my way out, so it gets lighter, so it blends out, as you see here. And I apologize for the camera shaking. I am getting a new setup. Right now it's pretty primitive. I'm pretty simple setup. I use a gooseneck attached to a cell phone, which is my iPhone, to record me drawing, and it's attached to my art desk, so when I erase, move around, it shakes it a lot. So I apologize for that. I am getting a new setup. Okay, so right there I just blended with a W4. So I used a 4, 6, and 8. So, and when you see I use the 4, I'll go back over the darker areas that I used in the beginning and work the color outwards where I want it, to stand out the most. And I just repeat it. I'm doing the same thing again here. It's a W8 warm gray, and then I'll go a couple shades lighter, and then when I do that, I start in the darkest area and work my way out from it. Alright, another question is, let's see, will you draw a blade? Now, you got a lot of you have suggestions. That's great. And if you have suggestions, the best place to put them on will be my Facebook page. So just go to facebook.com/Brian Rogers Artist and go ahead and like that page, follow. You could chat with me. It's easier for me to talk to people on there than it is on here on YouTube sometimes. I think it's easier for me to communicate with people more on Facebook as far as questions, suggestions. That way, I could do a poll, and I'll probably do a giveaway on there like I did here. And there's still one more package I need to ship out. I forgot his name. He lives in Australia. Don't worry, it's on the way. I didn't forget about you. I got really busy, and I apologize for it. Okay, here again, you see with the hair, this, I went from dark to light, and then when I go lighter, I start in the dark area first and work my way out. And you'll see me work that area a lot, and I probably do a little too much, but the more I do it, you can actually watch it when you do it yourself, especially on this type of paper. You can watch it blend. Like, you can lift up the marker and still see the colors blending together. It's really awesome. Super cool. I love these markers. I can't suggest them enough. Like, they're incredible. So I definitely suggest, if you're serious about it, invest in Copic markers. I've tried the cheaper brands, the Artist Lofts you get at Michael's. I've tried other knockoffs or cheaper versions, and really none of them compare to a Copic. The nibs, the ink, they're unbelievable. So thanks very much, everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the likes. Thanks you for subscribing, and thank you for the dislikes. Something you didn't like about it, I'll work on it. I like feedback. So keep in touch with me. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll try and answer your questions in the future by responding, typing it in or doing it in a future video. So enjoy the rest of the video. It's almost done. Right now it's basically just minor details and adding highlights to the rest. So I'll see you guys next time.